Listen to the banshee wail of the whistle. It is at the same time incredibly lonely and incredibly promising. It cries of trips to other places, of broad plains and craggy mountains, of distant oceans and huge cities. Watch the power. Watch the giant tube of iron and steel pull a mile-long kingdom of people and material. Watch the roaring smokestack and the thumping pistons, strong and unstoppable. Feel the earth shake as the iron dinosaur thunders past you. Feel the cascade of pure steam as the engine shoots beneath the bridge. For more than a century, railroads carried the lifeblood of our country, a nation with veins of steel. The heart of that system was the most exquisite creation of the industrial age, a machine at once useful and beautiful, the steam engine. Elegantly ugly, incredibly powerful. A complex machine that drew power from the simplest source and transformed it into churning wheels and pounding pistons. Even the names of the engines inspired awe-filled poetry and dreams. Niagara, Mogul, Texas, General, Mikado, Challenger. Some of these locomotives were more famous than U.S. presidents, and often more useful. The history of steam trains is the history of America, from the crude beginnings in the early 1800s, through the conquering of the nation's frontier, to modern 20th century civilization. I was only a boy in the last days of steam, but I loved those trains. And I wasn't alone. Generations of boys became men before me, and all grew up loving those vast machines, big and mean and loud and strong. We loved them, and we wished that one day, maybe just one time, we'd get to sit in that cab with our hand on that throttle, 100 tons of power thundering around us. It was a great dream. To understand the romance and power of a steam engine, you have to first understand how it worked and how steam was used. If you used your X-ray vision on a locomotive engine, you'd see that the largest part of it was a boiler, where white-hot fire turned water into evaporated steam. It is simply a metal tank with a firebox at one end. A network of pipes, often more than a mile if laid end to end, crisscross this firebox, and the water is superheated. The result is steam in enormous quantities, filling 1,600 times the amount of space as the water needed to make it. Enclose that in an airtight compartment and direct that pressure to a cylinder, and you have a basic steam engine. Excess steam and smoke were pushed through pipes to the front of the engine and discharged into the air through the smokestack. Despite what a lot of people think, those huge columns of vapor from a locomotive were not smoke, but mostly water vapor, steam in a cooled form. This steam power was then transformed into mechanical energy through a system of cylinders, connecting rods, pistons, and wheels. In this cutaway model, you see a simple version of a steam engine at work. The power stroke begins when the valve allows steam to flow into the cylinder. This expanding force pushes the connecting piston to the other end of the cylinder. In the meantime, the valve moves the other way, allowing the steam to push the piston back. Rods link this push-pull movement to the drive wheels. That means the force of each piston stroke reaches each drive wheel at the same time. But steam power not only drove the wheels, it supplied power for every other part of the train in every way. The steam whistle was the voice of the engine. It warned trespassers off the rails and signaled to the train crew and those at trackside. Atop the boiler was a small steam-driven generator supplying electrical power for the headlight, telegraph, and various accessories. 2 pumps supplied power for the brake equipment and bell ringer. Strong reservoirs held the air at a level 140 pounds per square inch. The brakes were iron shoes held against the wheels by air pressure. A twist of the engineer's wrist, and these thick metal parts applied friction to the monstrous drive wheels, wheels often taller than a grown man. And when the rails were slippery because of rain or snow, sand was sprayed between the wheel and the rail, again sprayed by steam power. But the steam engine began much simpler. Decades before America declared her independence, a Scotsman named James Watt developed a crude water pump which could be used to drive a machine. Inventors from England, France, and America improved on the idea, and the concept of rail tracks were introduced. These first small, cumbersome engines, like the Best Friend of Charleston, the Tom Thumb, and the DeWitt Clinton, gradually replaced the slow-moving barges on the canals in the eastern United States. Scoffers claimed that smooth driving wheels against smooth metal rails would just spin futilely. They were wrong. They had not counted on the great weight of the engine. The John Bull was imported from England by Robert L. Stevens for the Camden and Amboy Railroad in New Jersey. Stevens also designed the T-rail, which became the basis of all rail track in America and the world. The elegance of riding the coach car was dampened only a little by the frequent stops, when, often as not, passengers would have to climb out and help stock the woodpile. And to put the brakes on, the engineer had only to lean out the window, then yell at the brakeman sitting atop a shelter in the tender. To move produce and material from one end of the country to the other, it'd often have to be shipped around the lower tip of South America. But railroads could provide a better way. The birth of railroads came simultaneously with the westward expansion of the United States. In fact, one of the South's greatest cities began because of the railroad. The state of Georgia laid track to connect itself with the Tennessee River. This railroad began in the middle of nowhere in a pine ridge. At first they simply called the spot Terminus, then Marthasville. Eventually this railroad hub became known as the city of Atlanta. These early railroads were expensive propositions, buying the rights to land, hiring men to lay the track, investing in locomotives that could cost $10,000 to $20,000 apiece. That in an age when a loaf of bread cost a penny, and an acre of land could run you as much as 10 or 20 bucks. Throughout the 1800s, the federal government granted land to the train companies at dirt cheap prices, in exchange for a series of iron railroads that would knit the far-flung nation together. It was a way to subsidize progress. The steam engine made it possible for farmers in the South and the Midwest to receive tools and machinery, and to get their produce to big city markets back east while it was still fresh, to move mountains of raw minerals from the quarries and mines to the factories and mills, and to move people. The old-fashioned covered wagon still made that long trek out west, but more and more, people simply bought their tickets and arrived a few days later. The railroads did great good for the nation, but the railroad tycoons were not in business for their health. Yes, they were entrepreneurs, pioneers, risk-takers, but often as not, they were outright thieves and crooks on a colossal scale, transmitting orders from ornate business castles like this. There was Collis Huntington, who had no more soul than a shark, or the infamous Jay Gould, who left to his son an estate worth